My dad died and I'm scared my family won't get along. So yesterday after my dad comes home he eats what my mom made for him. Eggs and Spam. To be clear, he has a pre-existing medical history of high blood pressure and gout. First found out when he was admitted to the hospital in 2015 when he fell ill, and we basically had to force him to go to the hospital BC he didn't want to go. He was put on medication since, with changes to them maybe a year or so ago. So back to when after he ate. My half-sister heard a thud around 740-ish and told me to check BC. She thought maybe my parents are arguing. I go down and see my dad on the kitchen floor my mom behind him a few feet away and I hear him snoring. I ask my mom a question, get worried, run back upstairs and knock on my sister's door. She calls my other sister and also tells me to stop wasting time, call 911. I was scared and frantic. I wish I called 911 or saw him when he came in so I could maybe have called sooner. They get frantic too and we all start yelling at each other and I try to maintain order also as I'm talking to 911 person. At some point in all of this my brother-in-law yells for help and I help him turn my dad onto his side. BC he said he could choke on his saliva. My dad stops snoring and we start panicking. The EMS tells us how to perform CPR but my sisters keep yelling and so I try to get them working together. They finally start working on it. One is doing compression and the other giving him air and sometimes rotating. Fire department and ambulance gets here and they start doing the same thing but also have defibrillators and honestly, I'm just in shock still. It was maybe 8:03 p.m. when they came or so, I don't remember, it's all a blur. I checked my phone for timestamp, but I called twice so I forgot when original call was placed. They called it at 8:50 p.m. and I just began to lose it. My aunt comes and my sister is trying to call my dad's work to let his bosses know. We talk about how we want my dad's arrangements and agree on cremation. BC we don't have the money for anything else but also my sister wants the remains. My mom is bipolar schizophrenic and my sisters and bro-in-law don't get along. Her because of a whole history that would keep you here forever if I tried to type it. My dad was a bad person but he still chose us and tried his best to provide regardless of his fallacies. He had my mom's back too, saying he wouldn't kick her out or place her in a mental home. My sisters kinda want that, I think, but I'm scared to talk about it. My mom is okay sometimes but also acts up BC of her mental illness sometimes, and my dad and I were her constants regardless of what happened. My mom is old and still wants to benefit from some social security services that my dad had, but my sisters and I think we should get a majority control of his account. There's a lot of renovations to be done. BC he ignored upkeep of the house for a number of years, example, the roof. My mom is not very sad about the ordeal. BC she had a long history of mental abuse from my dad and I understand, but we for some reason stayed together. It how to move forward except for one moment at a time and I'm still waiting for funeral home to come pick up his body. It's 8:13 a.m. now, been waiting since night before. And I have been crying but also I can't sleep and I'm sorry if this doesn't meet guidelines. I just need to vent even though I told a few friends. I'm still in disbelief. How this will moving forward. I believe it can though. But it's hard to stay positive. I have a cousin by marriage, husband's cousin, that's 22 and dying of cancer. It was always her dream to marry and be a mom and now that's not going to happen. It's hard on everyone. She has a much older fiancé, 30 years, and they had a symbolic wedding so she could have the experience. They started looking for ways to get access to a baby that she could take care of and experience some level of child care that way. But with 2020 and ethics in general, there's not a lot of ways to do that safely. My husband and I have the first and so far only children of our generation, who are 10 months and 23 months old. I had hopes that it wouldn't happen, but her parents asked me if she they could borrow my younger baby for a few weeks. The cousin and her fiancé would basically be play acting having a baby. Her parents would also join in on pretending. There would be photo shoots and everything. This makes me really uncomfortable. It's really creepy. I cannot understate how creepy I think this is. I know that her not getting to live her dreams is sad, but I don't think this is the answer. I'm worried it will be traumatic for my baby. She's almost a year old and will, well, notice that her entire family will just vanish overnight for what will seem like forever. She's also still nursing, and they don't really seem to care about this factor. I'm really worried about problems down the road. This is setting a dangerous precedent of my child living under other guardianship. Her parents will have time to get attached and they could try to use that for familial pressure if not legally. Her fiancé is also a wild card in that regard. I said no, and my husband's entire family is hounding us about this because her time is running out and it's time sensitive. They say we're being selfish. They say that we could use this as a free vacation and bond with our older child because I popped them out so close together. They want to compromise now by letting me come by a few times a day to bring milk. We still don't want to do this. Yesterday afternoon, we got an email from the cousin's parents offering actual dollar amounts for us to agree. We got enough from that to file a police report and at least get the threat in writing. We also had a call with my husband's parents and his siblings to basically clear the air. Apparently what they were telling people they asked for and what they were actually asking for were very different. Everyone on that call now had them blocked on social media except for mother-in-law, because of the cousin. My sister was set to marry a guy who was a complete douchebag. He seemed like a nice catch to any outsider. He was tall, handsome, very confident, a doctor. Basically the sort of guy any woman would swoon over. Unfortunately, he was a sociopathic, unrepentant narcissist, devoid of any empathy, who would take out his anger on anybody he felt beneath him and seemed to enjoy doing it. You know how basically they say, don't look at how your partner treats you, look at how he treats others. And that's how he'll eventually treat you. My sister didn't pick up on that. I picked up on it early. This guy was really mean. Would berate and insult people for the smallest thing and would lose his cool with anybody who looked at him the wrong way. He started doing it to me, and I told my sister early on, this guy's an asshole. She was like,
Nah.
You two will eventually get along, you just got off on the wrong start. I told him I've seen him do that to other people, but she seemed to think, oh, but he's nice to me, I'm the special one. Maybe I can change him. Or I have no idea what she was thinking. After about 2 years together, when they were engaged, the cracks were evident. My parents loved him, his dad and my dad go way back. They both went to the same medical school together and have been close friends for decades. Her fiancé is also good friends with my 2 older brothers. After 2 years, my sister was realizing this guy was an asshole. He's always been an asshole, and he won't change. There was a really painfully obvious example one day when we were having dinner, and my sister's fiancé and my dad were having a discussion about something political. My sister tried to offer her opinion into the discussion, and they both snickered. Then this guy just started berating her and ripping into her in front of everyone, making her feel this small. I could sense her pain. She was just quiet and just sat there taking it. I was thinking, what are you doing with this guy? He has no respect for you. He has no love for you. Another time our family was at this dinner function where a lot of big people were around. My sister's fiancé completely left my sister alone at the table with me, and was sitting at this other table with 2 women. Very obviously flirting with them semi-drunk. He just left her all alone at the table. I asked her what was wrong, why was he ignoring her? She told me they had had an argument earlier and this was his way of punishing her. You see what I mean when I say this guy is a complete sociopath? My sister and I are really close, and even though I'm younger by far, little brothers aren't devoid of wisdom. And I've been urging her from day one to break up with this guy before she gets in too deep. Well, now that she'd spent 2 years with him and was engaged, she was obviously in too deep. And she used to tell me about all the outbursts he has, how he treats her with no respect. We often had long discussions, just me and her, where she'd spill open like a can of beans and just divulge all the bullshit that he's put her through recently. Sometimes she'd cry and I'd be there to help her out, but she still seemed to want to stick with him. She actually convinced herself that he loved her behind all that horrible treatment, and couldn't pull herself to cancel the engagement, what with our parents, his parents, everyone counting on it. She knew they'd all say she's crazy, turning down this smart, handsome doctor. I kept urging her to break up, but she stuck with the he'll change or he loves me deep down excuses. It all came to a heads when one day she very publicly exploded at him. We were having a huge dinner, both sides of our families, and I was sitting next to him. He kept bullying me the entire night. Move your elbows over, couldn't you wear something a bit more presentable? Stop sticking your hand out like that, it's rude, don't you think you've had enough of that? If I asked him to pass a bowl or the sauce or something, he'd hand it over but then pull away and be like, "Say please, say thank you." He was smiling the entire time, laughing. My 2 older brothers were also snickering. They didn't seem to mind this guy was publicly bullying me and having fun with it. He and my dad started having one of their conversations again. And my dad started airing out all his general frustrations and disappointments regarding me. And they started both talking about my life openly in front of me. Her fiancé then turned to me and started openly lecturing me, and when I tried to ignore him, "Hey, are you listening to me? What's the matter with you? Your dad never taught you any respect?" My sister just then basically exploded. She was sitting at the other side of the table, guessing she didn't want to be near him. But she was watching what was going on the entire time. My sister just then basically exploded. She was sitting at the other side of the table, guessing she didn't want to be near him. But she was watching what was going on the entire time. My partner and I want to be married, but we don't care much for the idea of having a wedding. We wanted to elope, but my mom has been telling me since I was 16, and had never even had a boyfriend, that she wanted to see me get married and she would basically never forgive me if I eloped. I do like the idea of my family being there to celebrate with us. But I hate the idea of spending money we don't have on this huge party just so that our relationship can change in nothing but name and legal benefits. And for various reasons, it doesn't make sense for us to wait until we can afford a wedding to get married. We wanted to keep it small, preferably under $3,000, which is honestly more than I'd like to spend. But we have to be realistic. We had planned on having it in my in-laws' backyard, but even that was more money and effort than I was willing to put forth. I was stressed and feeling like I was out of options, so one day, I vented to my mom. She seemed really excited about the idea of helping me plan a wedding. It was kind of a red flag when she said, "My mom didn't help me plan my wedding. Let me live vicariously through you." But still, I agreed. She seemed really excited to help me find a venue. I was not excited, because I have not been excited about one single step in the wedding process and I just want it to be over. About a week later, I found out that this really great park in our city that my partner loves does weddings for an extremely small fee. I emailed the event coordinator and found out that the date we want is available. I told my mom, and her reaction was, "So I guess you don't need my help finding a place, then?" And every time I talk about it, she says the same thing. She has always talked about how shitty it is to guilt trip someone, but I feel like that's exactly what she's trying to do. I honestly can't tell whether or not I've done something wrong. Like, I'm not sure if I implied that I would only get married in a place she helped me find. I don't feel like trying to take action on my own wedding is that great of an offense, but I can tell she's upset. I want to make her feel better, but at the same time, I don't want to change our plans again just so that she can feel involved.